He has beef with half the NBA.
Because I just want to get Skip Bayless in a room one time and just beat him like a dog.
And is known as LeBron's biggest hater.
The phony goat, as I call him in the basketball context.
In 2022, he pissed off the entire NFL with his comments on DeMar Hamlin. His job is to make the audience go wild, and he's doing it better than anyone else on TV. But why is Skip Bayless so popular? And how does he keep his ratings so high? This is the story of how Skip became the loudest voice in sports television. Skip was born in Oklahoma in 1951 as John Edward Bayless II, but his parents called him Skipper, which soon became Skip. Young Skip had a traumatic childhood, navigating through punches from an evil alcoholic father and the lack of love from a self-absorbed mother, who eventually became an alcoholic. When my father got mad, which was often, he hit me in the face with his open right hand, always making sure he caught me in the cheek or lip or eye with his wedding ring, which would leave a bruise or welt, or a little taste of blood. This forced Skip to develop a me-against-the-world mentality, and he was always a straight-A student. But his true love wasn't in academics, it was sports. Skip played football, baseball, and basketball with the dream of becoming a professional athlete. However, when he was 14 years old, Skip had to face an ugly truth. He wasn't talented enough to be more than a high school athlete, and his entire world collapsed. But there was one teacher who saved Skip from depression and shaped the rest of his life. His English teacher realized Bayless was a natural writer, so she pushed him to write more. Skip refused, saying that he was an athlete and not a journalist, but the teacher insisted and saved Skip from himself. Bayless soon became the primary sports columnist for the school newspaper, and as a senior, he applied for the prestigious Grantland Rice Scholarship to attend Vanderbilt University. Unfortunately for Skip, no one from Oklahoma ever got accepted on a writing scholarship to Vanderbilt, aka the Harvard of the South, so Bayless believed he'd be stuck in Oklahoma working for his father's barbecue restaurant for the rest of his life, until one letter came and changed his life. He was granted the full scholarship to Vanderbilt, after which he was finally free to leave his abusive parents. He also legally changed his name to Skip to cut all ties with his father, after whom he was named. In 1974, Bayless graduated cum laude, majoring in English and history. From there, he started a very successful journalism career at the Miami Herald and LA Times. By the young age of 27, he was already a lead columnist at the Dallas Herald. Bayless would go on to write 3 very successful books on the Dallas Cowboys at the peak of their popularity and became known as a sports writer. But to reach broader audiences and feed his ambition, Skip had even bigger plans: television. In 1989, Skip first appeared on TV as a panelist on ESPN. In 2004, ESPN hired Skip full-time to be a debate partner with columnist Woody Page on a show called First and 10.
Well, at least I don't look like Tarzan and sometimes play like Jane, but other than that...
In 2011, the show was rebranded as First Take and further catapulted Bayless's popularity. But it wasn't until 2012 and Stephen A. Smith's arrival to First Take that the show really exploded, becoming the #1 sports talk show in America. Bayless and Smith's passionate debates captured the audiences unlike anything else on TV.
Miami's got a better chance now because the chosen one won't turn into the frozen one. He's on the bench.
Blasphemous.
But how did 60-year-old Bayless become so popular at such an old age, especially since he wasn't a former athlete? Because there were plenty of athletes who have been on TV, and many columnists with hot takes, but no one fired up people more than Skip. So, how did he do it? Ever since his early days as a writer, Skip had a talent for clickbait. He'd write something so out of pocket and controversial that you had no choice but to read it, and he brought that same recipe to TV. One of Skip's first controversies was when he wrote that Troy Aikman was gay, even though he wasn't.
I'm sure a lot of people had heard it before, that Troy is gay. Now, I've talked to Troy about it.
But Bayless's real notoriety started in 2006, when he publicly attacked Allen Iverson and his trade to Denver. Bayless criticized Iverson for not being a team player, for his unsportsmanlike lifestyle, and claimed that his pairing with similar-minded Carmelo Anthony would never work. At the time, Iverson was arguably the most popular player in the NBA, and while Skip wasn't the only reporter who criticized him, he was the one who was the loudest in his bashing of Iverson.
And I sincerely hope I have now inspired you to win your first NBA championship, but it ain't going to happen.
And the only one who publicly attacked him without pulling any punches. And somehow, it worked. Iverson publicly addressed Skip's comments and said that Bayless motivates him more than anybody.
He makes me, go harder, that much harder. I'm not lying.
Skip then doubled down, mocking AI's professionalism and commitment to basketball, and then invited him for a debate on the show. While the debate never happened, the controversy spiked the ratings, which proved that Skip was headed in the right direction. And when Bayless's comments about Iverson proved to be correct, it only gave him more credibility and more popularity. Then, in 2009, when AI was already on the NBA backdoor, Skip chose another superstar to target, the one whom he would criticize and mock for the next 15 years, LeBron James.
Why do you hate LeBron?
You know, I wish he had a little more basketball killer in him. I don't think he has enough.
Dear LeBron, never have I seen a player with 0 rings heap more pressure on himself by acting more brazenly cocky about how he's going to win this championship. You dance during blowouts, you flex, and you snap pictures before games. You have now hit 1 walk-off jumper in 6 NBA seasons. Jordan did that every other week. So now it's time to start showing us what you've got. No more excuses. Back it up, and you will be king. This was the origin of the Skip versus LeBron story. Bear in mind that James was in the middle of his first MVP season, and that the Cavs had the #1 seed in the NBA that year. There wasn't a soul in the NBA media landscape who said anything remotely bad about LeBron, who had been the NBA golden child for years. Nobody other than Skip. And just like it did with Iverson, stirring controversy and trashing the NBA's most popular player worked for Skip once again. After LeBron lost in the 2009 Eastern Conference Finals against Orlando, it was Bayless's time to shine and put some more dirt on James's name.
I think the MVP suddenly realized when the clock ran out that he had failed miserably.
Despite the fact that LeBron averaged 38, 8, and 8 in that series, Skip only focused on the negative, like James not shaking Dwight's hand after the loss, questioning his character.
This was, to me, the real LeBron James. This is who he is, and to me, who he has been.
After LeBron lost in 2010, Skip's criticism continued.
The intangibles are much closer to Robin. He's Robin more than he's Batman.
And then, in 2011, LeBron gifted Skip with the greatest gift. In the 2011 Finals versus the Mavericks, James played the worst playoff series of his life, and Bayless was in 7th heaven.
Games 4, 5, and 6 against the Dallas Mavericks disappeared, ran from the basketball.
His 3-year-long slander of James, saying that LeBron lacks the clutch gene and winning mentality, was proven right. And Bayless suddenly looked like the smartest man on television. Around that time, Skip's direction and TV persona had been well established. He was becoming known as the person who feuds with athletes and says obnoxious things that no one else would dare to say. When Chris Bosh joined the Heat, Skip started calling him Bosh Spice, because he felt Bosh played soft and with a lack of aggression. Bosh had a problem with the Bosh Spice moniker, so he went on First Take and confronted Skip. While Bosh threaded calmly and tried to explain that this distasteful nickname is negatively affecting him and his kids and that name-calling shouldn't take place on a TV sports show, Skip didn't care, and he doubled down, saying that he'll continue to call him that if he continues to play soft.
I have no regrets with referring to you occasionally, especially early and at mid-season, as Bosh Spice.
But it wasn't like Skip was the only one dishing out insults. Numerous guests appeared on his show who wiped the floor with Bayless. In 2012, Bayless trashed OKC's Russell Westbrook and said that he was also a shot-happy point guard, but that he learned to pass. To that, KD defended his teammate by saying that Skip didn't know anything about basketball. Shortly after, a fellow ESPN host, Jalen Rose, appeared on First Take and embarrassed Skip like we've never seen before. See, Jalen Rose found out that Bayless had been lying about his basketball career. Skip claimed that he was a star point guard on his high school team that made the state finals, which was the furthest thing from the truth. In reality, Bayless didn't even play for the varsity team until his senior season, when he averaged a measly 1.4 points per game.
Did you average 1.4 points as a senior in high school?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Then, a few months later, right after LeBron won his first title, Mark Cuban made an appearance on First Take. Let's just say Skip wasn't a happy camper when LeBron won, so he continued to bash him and diminish his accomplishment. But Cuban was tired of Skip's antics, and he decided to rip him a new one.
You guys like to talk in complete generalities where no one can question you, right? You don't ever use facts. You don't ever use substance. You don't ever
use facts.
No.
Then, to prove his point, he asked him this simple basketball question.
Now, how do you think we defended that? Why do you think he was standing out there?
You didn't have to defend it.
Oh, right. So no matter what we did, he was just going to stand there and do nothing.
Well, that's all I saw.
Skip was lost, barely saying anything coherent, proving that his knowledge of the game was basic and that he only knows to place cheap generalizations as a facade for true basketball content. But that wasn't the end of Skip's feuds. Not even close. In 2013, the Seattle Seahawks All-Pro cornerback Richard Sherman came to First Take and trash-talked Skip during the entire segment.
Whenever you refer to me, whenever you speak to me, whenever you address me as All-Pro Stanford graduate, because those are some accomplishments you can aspire to, you will never accomplish. You have never accomplished anything. I am intelligent enough, capable enough to understand that you are ignorant, pompous, egotistical, cretin. I'm going to crush you on here in front of everybody because I'm tired of hearing about it.
But if you think that taking a verbal beating from a pro athlete on live TV would put someone's career to the ground, you'd probably be correct. However, in the case of Skip Bayless, these public fights only made him more popular. And that's because Skip isn't stupid, and the way he approaches TV is very calculated. He played the role of heel to perfection and did it better than any sports host in TV history. Just like Ali and Floyd Mayweather, he built his career by talking smack. And while many people loved Ali and Floyd and wanted to see them win, a lot of people hated them and wanted to see them get knocked out. But those people who hated them bought tickets and pay-per-view just like those who were fans. Skip followed the same principle, and he never cared if he was loved or hated as long as the ratings were up and people talked about him and the show. And guess what? First Take was the #1 sports show for years when Skip was there. In 2016, when he made the move to Fox and started Undisputed with Shannon Sharpe, Bayless continued to smash the ratings. Before Skip came to Fox, ESPN had a 23-1 viewership advantage in the morning time slot. After Skip started Undisputed, he closed that gap to 3-1. And while Cuban was right in saying that Skip doesn't offer real basketball analysis, that doesn't really matter at all, because Skip Bayless is not a real sports analyst like Kenny Smith or Michael Wilbon. Skip is an entertainer, and that's what the casual sports fan cares about. If you start talking to casual fans about finer details of spread offense or zone defense, you'll quickly lose them and put them to sleep. But if you bash LeBron and say that he's not half as good as Jordan, they'll either strongly agree or disagree. But either way, they'll be engaged and ready to hear more. And in almost any sport, there are more casual fans than purists. And that's all that matters from a ratings perspective. While he had a few correct takes and a few good guesses, Skip has had countless awful predictions.
Johnny Manziel will become even bigger in the city of Cleveland than his buddy and business partner LeBron James ever was.
But whether he's right or wrong, it doesn't really matter. He debates for the sake of debating and entertainment, not for the sake of argument. And that greatly explains by how Skip prepares for the show, which isn't very different from how athletes prepare for a game. The man wakes up at 2 a.m., runs for an hour, and then starts cramming up arguments and counter-arguments. He's like a battle rapper who tries to predict what his co-host will say and then have counter-arguments ready with the stats. By the time the show starts, he has a pile of notes with the different things he'll say on the show. And by his own admission, he forgets his arguments the next day. I'll remember maybe half of it by tomorrow, and in 48 to 72 hours, I'll remember maybe a fourth of it, and by next week, I won't remember much of it at all. Skip is willing to say whatever will get the most attention, no matter the content. He'll tweet out 10 controversial things, and whichever one gets the most engagement, he'll run on the show the next day. In a way, his way of grabbing attention is similar to LeVar Ball.
We talk about the GOAT here, the greatest of all time, Michael Jordan.
He would need help.
Really?
He's too small.
And even more, Donald Trump. Say something outlandish, and when you're stuck in a corner, reframe the question and turn it around with a joke. Then, passionately push whatever you're going to say anyway. Spice it up with some hard-to-dispute stats and get people's emotions high. Skip is a true pioneer in his profession, and he has to be respected for that. He's a professional troll, a guy who gets paid millions of dollars to talk trash about athletes, and he's doing his job better than anyone else. Like that time when he got mad at Kawhi for leaving the Spurs and refusing to call him by his name, which was hilarious.
You calling him Kawhi Leonard?
Yeah, you got to, Skip.
Are there
Skip, you got
any
quit on my team.
No, Skip,
any
you got
circumstances where you
People like Colin Cowherd, Max Kellerman, and others copied his approach. That's why Max once said,
"Fate of the universe on the line, or the Martians have the death beam pointed at Earth, you better hit it. I want Iguodala."
If you asked Kellerman about this in 30 years, he'd probably tell you that he'd rather have Steph Curry take the last shot. And he only said Iguodala to boost ratings. And guess what? It worked. It was good TV. It's all people talked about for days. And it all happened by following Skip's recipe. Bayless managed to stay relevant into his 70s, even with the Damar Hamlin scandal and the Shannon Sharpe feud that would kill the career of 99% of TV hosts. But Skip carries on because he's a habitual line stepper, and people are used to him saying crazy things. Some people love him, and many people love to hate him. The only thing that matters to Skip is that you keep on watching.